Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I make this presentation, the Turrbal and Jagera people, and pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone. My name is Datey. My paper focuses on the lived experiences of casual academics in architectural design studios in physical and online formats. This study interrogates the apprenticeship model of teaching and learning, particularly the roles, approaches, and strategies casual academics employ to transition from physical to online formats. In Australia, casual academics are any higher education instructor not in a permanent or tenured position. It includes part-time tutors or demonstrators, postgraduate students, people from industries or professions, or any other teacher employed on a course-by-course basis. In architectural education, casual academics make up about 77% of the academic workforce. And in design studios, they are known as tutors. This paper posits that tutors are primed to relocate their teaching practices into online settings due to their readiness to improvise and their responsiveness to diverse learners. In my study, there were 36 participants from 5 universities in Australia. There were 21 males and 15 females. 17 of the participants were registered practicing architects, 9 were not registered, and 10 were doctoral students. 16 participants had 2 to 15 years of studio teaching experience. 14 had under 2 years of studio teaching experience. 2 were teaching studio for the first time, but had taught other subjects such as construction, history, etc. And 4 participants were teaching for the first time and had no prior experience of teaching. My study has employed the theory of practice architectures as its methodology, which offers a comprehensive view of practices as comprising of sayings, doings, and relatings. Sayings are cultural discursive arrangements or language employed and taken for granted understandings of the disciplinary discourse. Doings are material economic arrangements or characteristic activities within the studio environment. Relatings are social political arrangements or relationships between people and things, and hence power dynamics. Data collection methods included teaching observations, which comprised of video recordings, field notes, and spatial mapping, semi-structured interviews, and focus group discussions. During interviews, tutors expressed that they teach students a way of thinking. They familiarize students with the design process and teach skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and effective communication. Tutors saw themselves as being role models who show students how they would act professionally. As more experienced professionals who have work experience and know the whole design process. As caring collaborators who engage and motivate students, and as facilitators who provide support and help, which is tailored specifically to each student. Tutors' conceptions of design teaching included providing critique or on demand or explaining on the spot, and responding to students and their projects based on their needs, abilities, attitudes, and approaches. Tutors said that what they do in design studios involves nudging, telling, showing, directing, not dictating, being firm, making students feel comfortable, and pushing students out of their comfort zone. A first-time tutor described it as how students respond to me when I talk. If there's an understanding there or not, that's probably the biggest feedback. Just seeing if they are engaging with what I'm saying. If they are not, then that's not the right thing to do. Testing it out on them. Tutors' conceptions of design teaching aligns with Sean's theorization of design teaching as reflection in action, occurring in the midst of teaching. Sean's theorization resonates with the lived experiences of casual academics and tutors. It provides a rationale for the master-apprenticeship relationship and legitimizes studio teaching and learning practices. However, Sean's theorization is critiqued for being limited to cognitive aspects, having a narrow view of modes of learning, not recognizing the intertwined nature of individuals' agency and context, and through the portrayal of tutor or teacher as a coach, perpetuating hierarchical power dynamics. Keeping in mind these critiques of Sean's theory, this paper expands understanding of design teaching practices. Tutors' interactions with design studios were found to be a matrix of verbal, non-verbal, and tacit sayings, doings, and relatings. Tutors' verbal practices include using incomplete sentences and pauses, asking open-ended questions, and sharing precedents. For example, as seen in the photographs and diagrams, as a tutor lifted a study model and said, I propose, during the pause, the student chimed in to say, I find this interesting. Momentary pauses or forgetting during conversations are sayings which include what is said and how it is said. It invites students to chime in and externalize their ideas or fill in and co-construct knowledge. Tutors' nonverbal practices include sketching and using models as props and playing with them to demonstrate the iterative design process. For example, while a tutor sketched on a piece of paper overlaid on a student's drawing, the student watched and said, I just can't draw that well. The tutor made brief eye contact and said, look at these chicken scratches. You have to draw to convey your ideas. About 2/3 of the way into the discussion, the student reached out to take the pen from the tutor and began to draw on the same tracing paper. In another studio, when a student said she was stuck, the tutor looked directly at the student and said, let's try this together, and began to rearrange study models while prompting the student to reason out why she liked a particular arrangement and hence make design decisions. During the discussion, the student imitated the tutor's actions and began to rearrange the models or play with them. These are examples of nonverbal storytelling. They are doings which model and demonstrate learning behaviors and encourage co-construction of knowledge. Tutors also encourage students to work in the studio and listen in or eavesdrop on one-on-one discussions with other students. As seen in the photograph here, the tutors had directed students to sit around a table and listen in while working on their own projects. In another studio, a group of students spoke in their common first language other than English, while a student and a tutor discussed nearby. After a while, one of the students from the group moved closer to the tutor to listen in. The tutor looked up briefly and continued to discuss. The student remained alongside the student to discuss after the tutor had moved on to discuss with another student. Encouraging listening in are doings which include what is done, how it is done, and implicates the studio setting in the process of learning. Tutors' tacit actions and behaviors included sitting alongside or diagonally across from students, which meant that they did not face each other, and their gaze was primarily directed towards students' shared materials. It allowed tutors to gather cues and gauge the needs, abilities, and attitudes and approaches of students, and then provide tailored feedback. Eye contact was flexible and deployed to convey messages that are persuasive, reinforcing, and/or sensory. Tutors also employ mirroring postures or body orientations to display similarity and/or authority and command or coax participation. These displays of power and agency are doings and relatings, which help tutors build perceptions of themselves as role models, more experienced experts, caring collaborators, and/or facilitators. Students imitated tutors' actions either on their own, as seen in the top two photographs, when a pair of students were observed providing feedback to one another using words and gestures employed by their tutors and rehearsing professional and learning behaviors. Or students imitated tutors immediately during discussions, as seen in the bottom two photographs, when the tutor picked up a small study model, tilted ahead and gazed through it. And when the tutor handed the model back to the student imitated the tutor, gazed through the model in a similar manner. Tutors' tacit actions and behaviors are doings and relatings, which role model professional and learning behaviors. Moving on to tutors' experiences and actions and behaviors in online settings, tutors highlighted that conversations did not flow. Listening became key to understanding students' absorption of what was said and demonstrated. Nonverbal communication from a distance was challenging due to limited technology. It was difficult to gauge students' reactions. There was less flexibility for positioning and demanded direct eye contact. There was heightened attention on shared materials. However, promoting peer learning or listening in was easier due to the public nature of the online setting. But additional effort was required to coax students to engage in this format. This table summarizes the actions and behaviors of tutors in the online setting. Verbal interactions in the online format were sequential with awkward silences and required taking turns to talk and listen. However, ease of sharing precedence heightened storytelling due to the inclusion of a wider range of projects available on the internet. Communications such as sketching over students' drawing or annotating, holding up models to camera or sharing videos of models, and getting students to externalize by sketching on the spot diminished nonverbal storytelling due to being mediated by basic digital tools and technology. However, the group format increased opportunities for listening in, but the absence of informal stimulation from peer group meant that tutors had to work harder to engage students. Due to reliance on digital technology, there was heightened attention on shared materials, which helped negotiate power dynamics. But there were limited opportunities to mimic and copy, which changed the dynamics of role modeling, learning, and professional behaviors. Furthermore, as the default position was face-to-face to the camera, tutors could not use their position to tacitly negotiate and manage power dynamics of the student-tutor relationship and gauge what students needed through eye contact and glances. The stationary position of tutors in front of the camera meant that they used limited postures and body movements, which diminished nonverbal storytelling. An experienced registered practicing architect tutor found online tutoring more didactic and physically restrained. They were no longer able to express themselves with gestures and movements, which they realize are integral to how they communicate and imbue enthusiasm in students. Tutors noted that they had to employ a different strategy and took an empathetic approach to adapting their design teaching practices into the online setting. In conclusion, the pandemic has foregrounded questions about the importance of studio spaces to studio pedagogy and problematized how or whether design can be effectively taught online, particularly without cues from behaviors and without the ability to hold and interact with shared materials. Changed communication modalities and mediation of interaction through technology has not only shifted the studio setting, but has also altered the signature pedagogy. One of the primary tensions that exists between physical and online studio formats is that while physical studio contexts are considered as delivering knowledge and providing an opportunity for modeling professional attitudes and behaviors, online settings are viewed to facilitate reflective and blended learning, peer interaction, and group collaboration through focus on technology and online teaching tools. The pandemic moment has presented an opportunity to interrogate the socially distanced formats and modes of interaction in architectural design and ask whether, besides the obvious digital equivalents, there may be new practices, technologies, strategies, and skills that can replace and/or complement interactions in physical spaces. The accommodations and adjustments tutors make to foster an empathetic online studio environment demonstrates how transformation of design teaching into online formats can be addressed. Thank you very much. I would welcome and appreciate your comments and questions.